Counsel, if we are ready to resume, may please proceed. Bring in a witness.
Yes, Mr. Chair, the witness is being brought in, please.
Thank you.
Mr. Marena, welcome back.
Mr. Marena, bismillah.
We were talking about the abuse of certain legislation during Jame era.
Darda fannal men jam ko wala na tambo dol men yalon ko kada luar la karola jamela warola.
And the last one we talked about was the Economic Crimes Act.
Labanda men fanna men jam wala mfanko tinya la loi men be okoro.
And some of the rather surprising features of that legislation, including the trial in absentia provisions. It contains an interesting revelation on some of the things that the government, with the right political will, can use to really deal with some of the findings of the Jane Commission. Because those are nothing short of economic crimes. And the trial in absentia provisions can come quite handy. Call it deja vu or taste of your own medicine.
The
other interesting feature is the issue of the bail conditions. So, but we would discuss that together with the other approaches to bail. Or how the bail provisions were abused for political purposes. So now let's move on to point number 2 in your write-up. That is abuse of the office of the DPP or the Ministry of Justice itself.
DPP
But prior to that, perhaps we can talk about the office of the DPP in general. As enshrined in the Constitution. If you could recollect, would you say that under the laws of this country, the office of the DPP should enjoy quasi-independence?
DPP la office me alan ko atel marlin kitindir kunyal la banko kanjang ata nyanna office nyanna kala official me alan ko abetara loring afaye politiko ta dunaje nyaton kata da dunaje abetara loring afaye ata ala ko tawande afaye ko duwa ya fo nyame.
Thank you. Baraka, having lived through a period where the office of the DPP was used as the main tool.
Wato mi yalon ko nin DPP nin na office woni ya tale kaka joranti
to target or persecute people.
O is blose futano molma anim fana ka mol kitindi.
I believe that was what informed the provision in the draft constitution
jigita ko wala yatinna fo ye nyim banko la loi buku ba mi yalan ko ye wala de dateng
to have an autonomous office of the DPP.
min kan lon dirke nyin DPP nyin na office wala faye
Because over time,
abin kato wato kono nu
like I said, the office of the DPP
min ngafo nu nyami DPP la office
has been at the center
tel fonta ta kol tema
of most, criminal persecution, so to speak.
jamal bi je mi yalan ko wolle mol mi yalan ko ye kol ku jawol ke pour que kitindi atala office wala fonta ta wo kol tema.
But why do you think that the office of the DPP was so amenable or so prone to be used for political persecution?
Itela mira do muna ya sabu ke muna fanni office wala memu DPP la office di ka ke office di me alon ko politiko la ko ka tamandi ba ke wala pour ka deto la molka.
In my humble view,
De fond la mira loto
I think a major factor
amala dalil ba min fon yatinna
which has made this possible
mi yatinna fo nyin ko katano tenga abe keren nu nyami
is the occupation of the office,
min doko office o nyin na doko nyin Kenya
the occupation of the office,
min office o nyin ka doko ke nyami
Those who are in that office, those who work in that office.
mol min ka doko ke office o nyin kono
by non-Gambians.
wol mum mol lete mi yalan ko manke Gambia dingolti
Because for the longest time,
ta meta nu nyami
the DPP of this country
mo mi yalan ko wala marta kitindi ndol Kenya la nyim banko ka wo wato
has been a non-Gambian.
manke Gambia dingoti
But post-94,
but janin 1994 sango kono
after
1994 sango kono
1994, we've had very good non-Gambian prosecutors in this country.
wato mo kendol so do mi Gambia dingol le miliyan ko ye kitindi
Gambian me yalan ko
miliyan ko manke Gambia dingol
But I believe that a lot of non-Gambian prosecutors and DPPs
ngalo nako mo jamal bi je mi ay ka kitindiro ke anin DPP mi ay manke Gambia dingol ti
were willing to engage in any kind of prosecution.
ka tarap
Go ahead.
ka tarap pareri na num pour que da dum kitindiro kona akeda no nyaaw nyam
Notwithstanding the ethical considerations of some of the criminal charges.
ndi bukana jiber ka tumirol mi yalan ko ko wolle landi koma be la anya asartol ni nyanta la nyam
In my view, simply because
dala jero to ni aje woka ko nyam
they did not belong to the society
ida mon tara ko min Gambia dingol kono
whose citizens
mi yalan ko wo banku dingol nying
were the subject of these prosecutions.
wolle keta moldi mi yalan ko wolle ko wolle kitindi nying kitindiro nying kono
So it was easy
woka nga natana sonia
because you were going to go away after a couple of years or after a few years anyway.
atuko ameta nyawnya sanji dantang nyato wala sanji dantang ye nyato la dron ite be kala moldi mi yalan ko be bola janne
So there was no risk of you coming back into the society
ay ba jala ko hani dalil o dalil taraje pour tesina muruna mol kono nyami ni mil be siri
and basically facing the consequence of some of the decisions you made
visina je ko mi be se nyatilin ko la mi yalan ko yewol kew
or some of the prosecutions you engaged in.
wala ye kitindirol mi yalan ko ida bulata wala kon
There was also little empathy.
kundim fana bije
There was little empathy.
wala fa ndim do bije
Towards people who were being charged left, right, and center.
ata mol mi yalan ko ko wolle tumi bulbani mara kata temal
I believe the Mandinka say balafa belongo le bala.
Balafabi longo le bala.
that is to say that sympathy is based on the person you know.
So that played a big role.
mo fenneti mi yalan ko way suid la bala tawoto
And after some time,
bring gato tata fameta demanding
the Gambian lawyers who were working at the Ministry of Justice
Gambia dingol mi yalan ko loyal le muti be do ko la Ministry of Justice
either
fo
avoided the criminal division
ke tankandir ke fannala ka do ko ke wo bundani ne ka fo mi criminal division
or left the ministry.
wala fanga ika do ko nyim fo bula fa ministry ni na do ko
And as a result,
wo yatina
most of the prosecutors
mo jamal bi je mi yalan ko kitindir lalle muyti
and the prosecutions
ni miliyalon ko kitio ko wala karola
ended up in the hands of non-Gambians.
anatana laba molbul miliyalon ko manke Gambia dingolti.
As a former Solicitor General,
wala men keta fo solicitor general latin koma
responsible for the administration of the Ministry of Justice,
itel marta nun kata do ko wala karola ka do ko je ka je ay tama nyala me yalon ko nyanda kay ke wala nya ministry me made luwal ni kitiol tamandir nyala.
why do you think there was a high attrition rate of Gambian lawyers at the Ministry of Justice?
mane ya mira ko mo Gambia loyal mi yalon ko be ministry me luwal ni kitindir ku nyala e mansianu isiata je e mansiaje.
There was a combination of factors,
ku jamal le bije mi yalan ko ne ka fu ñoma wo satina no
key among which
wo ku ku mal kono killing mo ñinati
was the remuneration.
ko mi wole ka min dila
Joro.
joro e ka min dila
Compared to what a lawyer can earn in private practice.
bi sina jibe momu yalan ko loyal le ma be do ko ke nga faya be jomin sotolano
So a lot of people left to private practice.
yaje so wala tina mo jamal nata ne fanyo e tata ta ka do ko ke
Because
faya loya yato
Paid more.
ato woto e ka joro soto no wolto bake
Some people
mo dol bije
also left
wol bota jele
because they probably were not happy
ato asike no fana e man content lenu
with the way the system was.
wato ning komin kul ka tamanu nyami abeke kanu nyami
And for them,
du pritol
the best way was to leave the ministry.
min nyanta doron wolen ka bo ministry bundanyindo
So I would say these two combinations
mba fala ko ning ko flol ni ka fu nyoma
played a role in the high attrition rate
wo kata fen
at the ministry over the years.
kata fenneti mi yatina wala yatina mol man siya mi yana ko Gambia dingol le milbe do ko la wo ministry bundanyindo
I'm talking about Gambians shying away from prosecutions.
donc ka fo fana ko komin Gambia no li buka pare wala buka la fike da dum komin ketindir kunyalto
I would take my own example.
mba talam fongol la misalo mba talam fongol
When I started my career at the ministry,
wato min yala nganna do ko dati ministry bundanyindo
with all humility,
mbem fanjila bake de bari
I was touted to be a very good prosecutor.
wato ndeketa multi mi yanko na kitindiro no bakele
I was doing well in criminal prosecutions.
ben na do ko ke kanga nyamale ko mi nana ta ka mol kitindi miliane ka kuja o baroke
In 2006,
2006 ango kono
sometime around May, June,
kata wati la wala me karo kata fo june karo kono
there was a day
lung
on a
soto
Friday
a benta juma lungo le fi
when almost everybody had left the office.
a telefon fon sa fo ko fa mo be seyta la nungi boto office oto
The then DPP
wo wato mi yalon ko wala kitindi la nyaton koti ka fa DPP
called me,
Name, please.
to
Fagbele,
ka
Emmanuel
fa
Fagbele,
ka fa Emmanuel Fagbele
called me to say that I should stay, beyond the Juma prayers.
nata fo nyako commune sersi nganata na fonin jumo tata tambita
When I asked why,
kabinga nyini ka mun dalile wasab
he told me that there were some people who were going to be brought to court.
ko nyako molle be je mi yalan ko nyande ke samba kiti
And these people were the 2006 Ndur Cham coup, suspects.
no nyul mo molle te mi yalan ko kon dur cham la wo kudeta bayri ngo min keta wo mol nying yemel tumi koy dabi je wo mol
6
I felt very uneasy
wo man fam mutano bagay wala
because it was very irregular
ato mo fenne de mi yalan ka man nyanna ka ke
that people would be brought in
ko mi be mol nati la nang
on a Friday
juma lungola
after Juma prayers.
adara juma salo keta foko pare
And I didn't know what had happened to them. Not because I suspected that something had happened to them, as the tortures were usually narrated at that time.
malong muna ketela de bar coming ya fo je nyame ko commune tajire yal mi yalon ko wolle ketela wo wato kono
But my conscience
bar im fo hakilo temboto
didn't really allow me to be part of that process.
man sondi no prundae bula wo ko kono
So I went to the DPP.
nata na murun DPP kan
I quickly thought about an idea.
ngam sita dolo ngam mira katabake
I had known one of the accused persons,
mo kilimbi je mi ala ya 2 million ngalone
Aliu Job,
e ka fa Aliou Job
whose brother was a good friend.
wala doko wala koto mun na terima kende balti
And I told the DPP
nata for DPP nye ko
that I am conflicted
kay ko nyin ko fulol blatam bulu ñoko non
because I've got a brother in this group.
to ko nga mo so dol mi yalan ko doko lemma da be
That I cannot be part of the team that would be part, the prosecution on that day.
andun tendata bulan mol ko no mi yalan ko nyanta ke kitindi wollu ngani
And since then,
abru wo wato ko
I didn't feel easy
man si mam famutano
being in the criminal division.
min katara wo de wo fanna ñi ne ka fa criminal division e ka mol kitin ku jaw ke lali ke kitin di dami
I asked for a transfer to the civil division.
nata fo ko pour yen sawnde dula do mi yalan ko mol mi yale da mol ka du ñole la kitiyo ka ka dami
Which was granted.
nata na so wala
So this was something that was regular.
mu fene di mi yalan ka asike nole
You don't want to be part of that system of prosecuting people that probably your conscience wouldn't take.
comme ngi ma ida ma ñena bulala ka mol kitin di mi yalan ko ta fon ima hakil ten ko soto wala karola
You either leave the ministry or you leave the criminal division.
min bi je walem ibe dahala ministry do ko wala ye sawnde ye samba dula do
Do you realize that since O'Brien Coker of blessed memory, we have not had a Gambian DPP?
fa hakilo si nyi mudano ka bring aboda Brian Coker me alongo alama ala yam fala me kabri aboda je man Gambian DPP maso to jam
I had actually thought that Fatu Bom was DPP, but maybe she was deputy.
hakilo ya mutako comme Fatou Bom asike no wo keda DPP te bari we alfa wonde
You would know.
From deputy DPP to Solicitor General.
abo deputy DPP no lango la kana ke solicitor general
So that's right. The absence of Gambian DPPs, I think, played a big role in the utilization of that office. Because Gambians would have found it more difficult.
comme bari Gambian dingol wal mantara je comme ka DPP ti wala fonga yatina fon natara no Gambian dingol bi je wo fon be ko ko lande la no
Because they would have to really live with decisions that they made with the people that they live with.
kato foye ye lo ye kuntundir ke fon la mol mi yalan ko ni wala benda
All right. But can you just expand a little bit more
isa fanu
on
ndinye do mandi nyaadi lamu
how the office of the DPP was abused
DPP la
for
office
political ends?
ñing DPP la ñi office o ñi ye lana tambe ko ke ñu je nyaadi le pour politique wala nafala ita kan
Certainly, the office of the DPP
min DPP ni na office o ni
asked very little questions
ni ni karen dinal bi jede semin kenu
with regards to cases that had some political interest.
min kata kesi so la wala diamol de mi yalan ko politique ko le dabije
With regards to whether to initiate a prosecution or not.
ka jiber ke fo tonya nyanta ka datle ke kitindiro ke fo hani
So at the end of the day,
mu ko mu labandula dorom
some cases, not all,
diamo dol bi je wala kesi solti
the decision to prosecute
ka kuntundir ke ka fo ko be kitindila
was not entirely a legal one.
man ke fenti mi yalan ko ba fla bebe lare loi la fanala kan
That is real condemnation of the system.
mu ko kula de me alongo bantambilo nyen kala ko to le system o ñi na karol
Or a really damning proposition that the decision to prosecute was not a legal one.
ko ka kangota pour ka mo
Not entirely
kiti dol
illegal.
beje
Not entirely a legal one.
ko ka fo ko dol beje pour ka kangota pour ka mo kiti dol beje e buka sutara sujiri ni loi kan
Could you kindly expand on that? What were the considerations or the other
fo
considerations?
isa katar ba yeje fanu ndinye do man dimba mun kole akulle katara chokirin wol bala ni ngadra o kansi faltar men ya lonko ka mo kiti ndi bari amandra sujiri ni loi la
No, like I said, if, for instance, Jami
comme nga fo nyami comme sa misalongoto jamme
was adamant that somebody should be prosecuted,
balanta kar ka fo ko mo nyimo kari fo ya ketindi
he would give instructions to the Attorney General,
abe kuma kongol futandela ya marol futandela attorney general ma
which would be passed on to the DPP.
o kuma kongol ni ba futandela DPP ma
And unfortunately, the DPPs would not stand their ground.
andu wakang DPP te lo simpa da tanola
No. they would not stand their ground,
ita lono la komi nyanta lod la mentala
really argue
pour que sosondirke
strict legal basis,
wala miliyalon ko wala tata loi fanala
as long as they've got the signal.
atara ye sopindi wo kola.
But this was a case that, I mean, the presidency was interested in.
komi ni mudi amulete miliyalon ko president nying ay sulo soto jele.
And these directions
insilol yamarol men
to prosecute,
pour ka mo kitindi
in which form would they normally take?
jama e kanani ni sila nyaadi lela.
Well, generally, I mean, I believe this would be oral directives.
Ni a benjibe komi wato do biji akaka dalete re ka fole.
It's very rare to find a written directive.
Akakole abakele priya kuma ko je miyalan ko ye yamarol di abe safari.
Although it does happen. I mean, I want to believe it does happen. But most times it would be probably the Attorney General being called over to the State House.
But sinya jamal bije minka ke Attorney General la kumandi mansala kodato.
And they're given instructions.
Woto ye yamarol di ala nyanta minkala.
Do you think
Mira
that the fusion of these two functions
bunda fulol la tamandirinya
played a role in getting our attorneys generals to be compliant?
nyimbunda fulol pour ye tamande minister ka membe mare luwal nin kitindiri kunyalla.
That is the fusion of the function of attorney general and function of minister of justice.
Well, minister attorney general and minister of justice nyimbunda fulol ni ni tamande akang fo ika yamira ko ni deta akang ika sondiro ku ika tamande kendirino ko dolal me alonko ito lafita la nyamemba.
It played the most significant role.
Because one role, Minister of Justice, would be political. And the role of Attorney General should be an independent public function.
Attorney General
So when you fuse these two functions, the political tends to override. Simply because that one same person becomes a political appointee. Would you shed more light in it?
Oh, certainly. I think you've said it all. Because really, I mean, the fusion of the two roles certainly led to, I mean, politically exigent decisions. Over legal considerations. In some cases. So certainly, I mean, in a situation where the two roles are separate, with adequate guarantees of independence, that would probably help in the basically distinguishing legal issues from the political.
I understand that O'Brien Coker, of blessed memory, last occupied that position of DPP in 1978. That's a long, long time.
Indeed.
And I don't think we're really short of lawyers who could occupy that position of DPP.
We are not short of lawyers. In fact, after the change of government, because of this abuse of the office of DPP that occurred, during the Jame regime, the Attorney General, Abubakar Tambedu, made it a point of duty make sure
ka jeko
that the office of DPP
DPP la office o nying
is occupied by a Gambian.
mo la nyanda tara je mi ala ko Gambia dingole mati
Unfortunately,
bari ya manna keno wanyama
the
don
position was advertised twice.
ye wo do ko nying inata na ke fenti mi ya janjan de la promo sata ka kankula
But Gambian lawyers were not interested.
bari Gambia la loya dingole tol mang
sulo
soto je
And that is why,
wala ya tinna
despite the office being a constitutional office,
atara ko nyin luwale nyin office o nyin londi
the position was not filled.
isani wo be wo doku dolanya hani sai mo so dai bam
Since 2017.
kabrin 2017 sango
Because the motivation was
kato mi o tinna wala nyinti ko
that we should get a Gambian.
nyanta Gambia dingole keleje
Because we couldn't get a Gambian,
atu ko bari man Gambia dingo soto no
the position remained unfilled.
am sai wo dinkira bo nyamare
So
mo
maybe
so
it's an opportunity to, appeal to our learned brothers and sisters
askenyi mbek sekeno wato ti la pour ka danir ke na mole milialon ko wolle londo soto dole loyalty
to take up the opportunity,
pour ka nyin doku wo nyinta
even though it comes with less financial rewards
nyin kam fam aya tara fam de pass ba man taraje
than the private legal practice.
ka foko doron ha mbatungata doku kem faye loya ya la karola
Because it's one of the hallmarks of our sovereignty.
atu wo mo dinkirati mi yalan ko wole baytan le control bem fayen ne lotanom fayen
Sometimes it's actually embarrassing
wato dol bi ya ka kam malu balti
when you travel outside
ni findira Gambia bango kam
and inform or tell people that your
Careful.
DPP is a non-Gambian.
ka fo molie wala ka mol kam la mutandiko ndo la DPP nya man ka Gambia dingoti
So it goes to our national pride.
wo mo fenati mi yalan ko ndol bango dingo nyanta kalenya bunya fengolti
That constitutional offices should be occupied by Gambians.
wo luwa wo do ko dula mi yalan ko luwale ya londi Gambia dingole nyanta taran je
And if you raise this very important point,
ni point
that the
kuma bale fu
the
bulindi
fact
jam
that they were non-Gambians make
Nyinka.
them more likely to be compliant with the visits of the executive.
nyin kamala ko baay koy manke Gambia no di asike no be kera molle de mene ya lon ko be sonna ya jamela ku dianya ko la la talafta men la la
Be they legal or extra legal.
fo ay ayo kangol mendi fo ini luwa tara la bang fo ini luwa man da bang bari to ba tara
My colleagues have just sent me this interesting example.
de do nyo do fele jang mi alon ko ay misal ya nya bori ngo kinje jang
And I'd like you to comment on it.
mbela fle kuma fo ala kuma kan
Mrs. Mariam Denton
Mrs Mariam Denton
was acquitted
ya bula
of charges by Justice Monaghan.
ya bula tumiro la mem ya me la kan andu me ya bula tumiro kan wala justice munagenti
That should extinguish the case at least until an appeal has been launched, isn't it? But I do, according to the information received,
ko kibaro nga men soto jang
Fagbele immediately
fagbeli tariyarinke
stood up and objected to release on the ground
a
that
wulita a balanta pour bularola ni dalilo kan
they had fresh charges
Wait, 2 minutes,
of
put letters
treason against her,
bara tumiri kutolle son me ka fa treason wala jamfa jawoti
which were not, in fact, before that judge.
me ya lon ko tumirol fan wato la amanta o kidite la ni nyaati mo fan
The judge just courageously stood her ground.
e jojo nyin rong ye o tembe dar nyin do o ala daniro nyin kan anat na o ala be daniro nyin londi
What do you have to say about that example?
itibe mun soto la be mem fo la misalo fe mem fo jande
I have two responses.
na jabir fulale soto
One is
ilim mo nyinati ko
Justice Monaghan probably did that.
justice mun again I work le drum
Not probably, was able to do that
I work nole
because he was a Commonwealth judge.
atate mo molde mi alon ke ka fo kitindir la le mi ala be commonwealth la koto
And so she had all the assurances of independence.
so inat wala tinna ya itandala ko kate ya ba fan soto la bala do ko kala anu hani fenda to bulala kono
And during her tenure here,
do wato mi abe do ko ke kan jang
she did make a lot of very independent and sound judgments.
wo kanga nata kiti te jamal le ke milia lon ko wo kiti te lote fayne hani fenne damam bula kon
Regardless of whose horse was God.
amang hanata la fanga man jiber ke fo jumale dabi je wala min dati je
Second response
na jaabir fulanjaŋoñi
is that a Gambian DPP
Gambia no mi yalan ko wolen kiti la ñaton koti
would not have done that to a senior legal practitioner of the Gambia.
wota woni kusifal kala mola mi yalan ko loya balem nim banko kanjang
So that goes to explain my earlier explanation.
mu felneti mi yalan ko abe yitandiro kala nga dantirol min kenu jam foloke
The nationality of the DPPs
wolem komi ñin DPP ol ñing mum banko ding le moytu
played a big role
keta kulati mi yala ko mata ba
in some of the decisions they were making.
ñin kuntun dirol mi yalan ko yewolleke kiti bundato
But also the nature of the contract
wato bari
that the person had
bari hanin kabi fa o mari ñin fanan contract ko ñi men ditala al ni ajubi abe lari ñame
also played a role.
fanay lafa ran ko je
Justice Monaghan
justice monagen
was not so compliant simply because he was a Commonwealth judge and, as you said, had all the protection.
aketa molde me ya lonko mantra maroko to ko ya fo ñame lual ni sartol men dila kabra be juddo ko dila ya tandala ko ibe fanye ne isila kangol tankundu no ya kundwa ya fo ñame.
The same could have applied to the DPP or the state council, foreign state council who are with the Minister of Justice.
O ku kilo fana nyanda la DPP kan waranto state council banko la kitindir la kan me alon ko be do ko kan mansay.
What was the difference?
Munam fatu dije.
There was something interesting
ubi jele mi yalan ko akumata bage
about the foreign technical assistance that came to Gambia.
wala molti miliyalan ko banku kote molle miliyalan ko ina tana banko ni dema
Some of them
wol kono dolbi je
were working with their governments,
ni la masakunda lebe do ko la
and basically they were civil servants in their countries,
so ni nata jibe mo molle ti miliyalan ko be do ko la masakunda la koto
and they were sent here on technical assistance.
so ina tane kina jam priye na demar ka dol la jam
But some of them
bari dolbe kono
were not working with the governments of their countries.
ni mantala do ko ke kan anila masakunda mi yalan ko wolle kina jam
They were handpicked
ye tombonne
and brought to the Gambia.
ye natina Gambia banko ka
So they did not have the assurance of, employment with their government back home.
so ibajala ko ila masakunda mi yalan ko wole be ye wole to kom e wol man litandir kela ko ila ye ta do ko mi na be kala finente ambe taral lorine
So that also played a part,
fana keta fonati mi yalan ko woda keta jela
because for somebody like Fagbele,
ado
for
mom yalan ko
instance,
jaga fak bele misalo la karola
we are talking about,
e kam foten
he was not a Nigerian government employee.
manke moti mi yalan ka be do ko ke kam Nigeria masakunda le koto
He was sent here on technical assistance
ya kina janne prana de maroke banko kanja
contract.
ko min contrago la ka wati kono
He was a private practitioner in Nigeria.
te mo molti mi yalan ka be aba do ko ke kan afayne loya yala karola Nigeria banko kan
Would the duration of the contract, in fact, have a role in getting these people to be compliant?
ni contrat ko nyin na wato nyin fo fanam be kala kula de me alon ko abe la faran kala kuto me alon ko ni mu nyin do kulaldi pour yeson man sala ka man zayba.
Certainly. The chances of extension of the contract
mi sa ela do ko wicho ni wato kono pour yena do ko ni wicho la fe
depended on your, performance
be katule dorong ete do ko nyin kanyami
in the eyes of the person holding the last pen to the contract renewal.
comme mom yalan ko wala fonga eta do ko nyin na adesta do ye wo contante nyami itela do ko nyin kenya
So obviously, if you wanted your contract to be extended,
so ya joko mobe salon comme ni lafta pour yela contrat go nyin lafa
you would have to play ball.
enyen daga ko leke mi yalan ko itol lafta wala
Did Gambia government really have much of a choice on the quality of state council who are sent to Gambia on technical assistance?
Fo Gambia masakunda fo ye fero soto le bambur ka tama ni mo la me alan ko ke kina njam pour yena de maro ke mansa Gambia masakunda la kiti la karola ba.
I believe there is an English saying
lata ko comme angalel ka kuma dole fa
that a beggar has no choice.
momi yalan ka be danilola wo ye fonga fen dia dro anyanta ka mutal
Technical assistance request,
don sa ni ko lafta demar la pour yena
in simple terms, was begging.
Well, comme ni ajibe dorong amari be danirol.
So Gambia government did not have the opportunity to vet.
O kan Gambia man sekunda man na wato soto pour ka jiber ke tame
Or to refuse persons sent by another country on technical assistance.
wala ka balanke mol la mi yalan ko banku kote ngo mol le kina pour yena demaro ka Gambia man sekunda.
And with that, we got the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Andu wo kono na mo kendol soro mo jawol aning mo mulu jawol sono soro kono.
Indeed.
Wala fong.
To the detriment of the public service.
Narana ke deto ke mol jumali kan wala masakunda do kulal kan.
Correct.
Wala fong.
And the quality of some of these lawyers.
Ni lawyer dol be jamialan ko mo kendol lem.
Can you comment on that?
Fo isi kuma fono fanantro la
Seeing we could not beg a gift horse from the man, we had no choice but to accept whatever we were saying.
Ya fa nyame fere tanyi jere yemen yeso menna ikawleta.
Tell us something about the quality.
Say ni ile noto ni lawyer noto kuma fonye woro bang.
Certainly, some of them were extremely good.
Yaje dol be kono wol mo moleti mi yalan ko yel do ko fanna kalamotale kende ke fong.
And some came to Gambia to improve themselves.
Dol nata Gambia pour que fang muna fandoro.
No.
Ke fanna
Pour que fanna ko la fa.
And some were even untrainable.
Dol fong bi je fangi me karani.
No.
On what?
Some could not be improved upon.
Dol bi je wol me fang kafuno londo la karola.
Yes, the quality was bad in some cases.
Wala tina wato dol bi je fang komin do ko ni nyanta tala nyama mom bete anum bake.
What do you think can be done to really improve this system? Considering, of course, that for the foreseeable future we may continue to require, technical assistance. What can we do to improve the quality of lawyers we receive on technical assistance? And the terms and conditions in which they serve us as a state.
Certainly the ideal. The ideal situation. The ideal situation.
The ideal situation.
Okay,
the best situation.
Exactly. Would be to have our own. Like all sovereign African countries. And of course, the Gambia Law School is continuously contributing to that. To make us self-sufficient in the legal profession. But until such a time that all the products of the law school would mature, and to become seasoned lawyers, maybe one way of improving on the quality of the technical assistance we receive
technical assistance
is to probably set the standards of experience, education and competence that we expect to receive.
But Mr. Marine, you realize that in the previous dispensation, the issue of minimum qualification for positions was observed more in its breach than in its honor.
pour mola makamo pour ni ala makamo amari nyana ni palaso kankula amari nyana makamo men sotala
or was more honored in its breach than in its observance.
Ka korosi ni nya menna ani membe fana be kerinje ka fatale.
That is correct.
Well,
So would you suggest that insistence on minimum standards
Raibe ñu falala ko pour ama hanara ma besi bari hanara makam amari nyina makamo nyi ala lord la nyi na tembedaro
insistence on merit
nyina tarla tukula ning amari nyina kayto nyina bete yalla
is key to this?
fonang la farangonti nyinto.
Certainly, that's what I meant by, setting certain minimum standards that people who come in to help us should have.
anko wala foten comme mol mi yalan ko bina makola wo londo la karola nyanta londo min sotala.
It's been suggested that
Miro dita ko
Justice Isauko, also in the Hamadba case, stood his ground on refusing to comply with the wishes of the executive.
afana lota Hamad Bala case to pour wala nyindi ko kango men dita la pour aya tamandi Hamad Bala case to abalanta wala.
And the view is that
Ko menti wala nyindi ko
he too was the judge too was a Commonwealth judge.
men fara wala nyindi ada fana mu Commonwealth joyolti.
True.
So the nature of the contract the person received played a big role.
Munta o mari nyingi contrat ko min diala la nyala ku ma ko men beje ku la nyingi o fana mu kula de mi alon ko akala faranke ala kuotol.
Not only the nature of the contract,
Man ka doron comme do ko nyin ditala sa role men kan doron dit.
but I think the appointing authority also
Bar nga njigita fana ko mol mi yalan ko wolle fonga ya ta do ko la.
would be equally important,
Fana ka kuma jele.
because obviously with an institution like the Commonwealth,
Ato ni ajibe dinkira do ko la min joko ko Commonwealth
you can be assured of not being unlawfully terminated.
ba bamban le mal ko ite bayla do ko la nda tara man ka luwa kan.
If it's a Gambia government contract,
Na tara Gambia man sakunda wolle wo do ko nyindila.
the contract is as good as the paper it was written on.
Kontrago nyinga bete ala komi ya kaito minta ya safa nin kaito.
You could be terminated at any moment.
Ise bay no le wati wo wati kon.
With regards to the position of DPP, of course,
Kasuji ning han kabi DPP la office wala han zai.
has the Ministry of Justice considered
Ministry
Terms.
marle lual nin tilingola fo ka ke kusonson de bang.
the terms and conditions of service?
Wala nyindi amari nyini ata do gola nyanna bulala sartol nin tamande bulol men no ma fo ka ministry nyin kala mutandira fo lo bang o mari nyina palaso nyina.
Because the position of DPP should ordinarily, the qualifications for position of DPP should ordinarily be at least as a minimum that of Court of Appeal judge.
Adun DPP office o nyin afuta nyaaw nyarande nyam ala londo la kalso kam ala makamu nyanda ka mensura londo la karola anyanda kila makam londo la temia lon ko be kayto mensura be kala jojo la qualification kilingol ti.
So if the conditions of service are not as attractive, definitely.
So ibaje la woto ninga adra sartol nyimi alon ko ye wala landi o palaso nyina kam ninga adra manke sartol mi alon ko ay mo kontan.
It would be difficult to attract the qualified people.
Abe koleala la pour mol men ya lon ko yew
At least qualified Gambians.
abe koleala la pour mol me ya lon ko Gambia dingol le misal fe me ya lon ko ya londo ni a karango sota pour yew palaso nyi ya nyini.
That is very correct.
Wo mo tonyalti.
In fact, one of the successes
Am fam kol mi yalan ko wolle fon keta no fam.
of the former Attorney General,
Wala keta ku Attorney General tino nunto
Tambedu,
ka fo mi tambedu
was the approval
wala nata song
to improve upon the terms and conditions
o min kala far ke wala tamandir bulol mi yalan ko wala nyanta tala sartol
of all state council,
min tata karola mi yalan ko wala banko la loyal nyilti
the Ministry of Justice,
min tata Ministry of Justice la karola
and basically to be at par with that of the judiciary.
donc isa de ko isa tembendi no ani judiciary la karola
So the DPP's office, as you've rightly stated,
komi yafo no nyami DPP la office oni
the terms and conditions are now pegged at that of a Court of Appeal judge.
sarfol mi yalan ko ye wala landi je ni ajibe aning Court of Appeal komi Court of Appeal kitindir lañi ani wala makamo be tambe.
And this has been there since January 2020.
Ñin tarra jele kabrin January karo kono 2020.
And the possibilities of national continued legal education would also help.
Wala mnyindi fana mboka tentenka banku be karandiro ke wala mnyindi ko luala karola o fana be kala kula me ko abe de maro kala le.
Certainly, I believe that is a responsibility that lies not just with the Ministry of Justice.
Lata ko wo muddo kula te mi yalan ko adon manke ko abe Ministry of Justice da male bulude.
But with the General Legal Council of the Gambia.
Pare ka fo mi General Legal Council Gambia.
And the Bar Association.
Ni ka fo mi Bar Association loyal la bundato.
Because continuous legal education,
atu ko ka continue ka karandir ka loi bundala karola,
as it happens in more advanced jurisdictions,
ka kele dulato mi yalan ko wolela yuruwa tambita dolti,
it's applicable to all practicing lawyers.
Dung anyanta ka ke mo bele mi yalan ko be mo moleti mi yalan ko loyal le molti be loyal do ko la.
In fact, in many jurisdictions, you would have a proficiency test in order to maintain your eligibility to practice.
Jama banko dol me alon ko wolke mari koto bole fam pour isa ko janni be la o palaso nyingi iba tuno la je waranto jani ba soto la,
which we do not have in this country.
ndun tol mo so nyi banko kan.
Once a lawyer, always a lawyer.
You get a lawyer to wrong, itamu lawyer.
Yep. It's true.
So now let us move on to the issue of political interference in the justice sector.
Ministry bunda de
say in the judiciary, to be more precise. I do know that Gambia has been said to have mercenary judges. We have heard that in both political and legal circles for a long time. Can you tell us about that? Was the accolade deserved, and why?
Well, I mean, like you rightly stated, this was a terminology that was coined to refer to certain judges. And mostly foreign judges. And these were judges who were not necessarily sent on technical assistance. But who came here on their own with legal qualifications and probably little alternatives in employment. And when they were appointed as judges and given all the pecs of office, they would do anything to please the people who gave them those contracts.
And who would be that?
Because the appointing authority for judges is the president. And so, yes, I mean, if you look at some of the decisions that were made by certain judges and magistrates, I mean, you could say it was a justified tag. Be called a mercenary judge.
pour ye commande ka fo ko ñul mu kitindir lalle te miliyalan ko ye jole pour ye na kitindiro ka ñama miliyalan ko miliye natina jam wala miliye ta do ko lefte ye kitindiro ka wala ñama.
Kindly give examples.
Misalo dinna bang.
Well, I mean, there were judges here who, like Justice Paul, for instance.
Comme kitindira tata nun jang misalo do mil joko Justice Paul.
I mean, who everybody believed was very close to the presidency.
Wo wato ko mo jamale lata ko kasuti ata nun president la bak.
Another interesting choice of words. Close to the presidency, you're referring to an institution. You're not saying close to the president, referring to the person.
In this case, I'm using it as a single entity.
He was close to Yaya Jammeh.
Yes.
Why did you say that?
I have never seen him, but I have heard, just like everybody did here, that he would even go to Kanilai during the weekends. So,
what nationality was he?
Justice Paul was a Nigerian.
Justice Paul mo Nigeria dingolti.
A judge going to the home of the president?
Jojo kiti kundrindra membe alonkabe kiti bumbado kata president wala kordal.
That was the rumor in town.
Molka wala ngunu sateo kono.
Wow. And could you tell us about some of the cases that he presided over?
Fo ese kiti dantanu fo ena jam bam me alonko asit atel site kunaba.
Maybe the most obvious one would be the Baba Job case.
Nsafo no min formo mobe milon wala Baba Job la diamo watoti ala case.
What can you tell us about that case?
Well, I mean, he's the one who presided over the case. Convicted him. And I believe sentenced him to up to 9 years in prison or so. Yes.
And your belief is that, well, it's not out of the ordinary that a judge sentences an accused person. That is normal. That is what judges do. So why do you cite this as an example?
No, I mean that is the probably most famous case that he had presided over.
Wala nyindiko nyine kata diamote mi yalan ko ate fonle kata kiti taylati and wala darajata mole wala long back.
What makes it famous? Is it the personality who was charged, or is it the violations of rights that punctuated that case?
Mune ya sabu ke wala diamo ni bawa job lo case ni aketa case mi yalan ko darajata baga fo mola mi yalan ko ate aba kiti nyin kono bang fo.
It was a combination of the two. Because obviously everybody knows that Baba Job was probably one of the most powerful men in the country at the time. So to basically drag him to court was a big national, event. And of course, it was during that case that his lawyer, Usman Silla, had an attempt on his life. And a lot of people believed that was as a result of his defense of Baba Job.
But of course, Mr. Usman Silla was not the only lawyer for Mr. Baba Job. Do you recall who else represented Baba Job?
That was a big team of lawyers,
lawyer jamal lebenunje
but my party stands out.
but my party wo yo londi kanala
As also one of the lawyers in that case.
da be bulata lawyer konole mil ben wo diamo kono
There was an attempt to assassinate
ngani yo soto talno pour ka
farke
farke
Mr. Usman Silla.
Mr. Usman Silla pour ka fa
Do you know if anything happened to Mr. Fati?
fo yala na foku soron la ba me yalon ko wala fanan keta Mr. Fati la ba
Mr. Fati was also involved in a near fatal accident.
Mr. Fati fana ada bulata nung accident o konol de mi yalon ko accident kolem balem
I believe on the Senegambia highway.
lata ko akete nun Senegambia sila bale kan
And certainly, I believe he has said that he also believes
ate fana ya fole ko ka latale ko
it was not a real accident.
manke fendi mi yalon ko doro lanjini accident olem
It was an attempt on his life.
bari yakele doron pour ka niyo pour ka fa yake wala kama
The commission received evidence that Baba Job himself was executed.
comme so ngoy se dandiro soro jan ko baba job fon mole me yalon ko ya faale
By the junglers at the RVTH.
andu men yo kala wollem jongulalde ya kala dami to wolto na bankola lopitan badoti RVH
But not only that,
bara manke wodrom fanande
commission also received evidence
comme so ngoy se dandiro fanan soro
that he had finished serving his term
o luwa es bulo men muto men kala wollem sanji konon doti ay wala le fa ya bang
of imprisonment. Still, he was not released
kasoro andum hanin kabi iman sonna kabula
and held in prison unlawfully.
natana ka sabatindi kasoro je luwanta yaka
What do all those facts put together indicate to you?
wolto kuma kon ko be me yalon ko wala lata kan way mune tandi tela
Well, I think they indicate that his case was a very politically motivated case.
ngam murtala ko wala ngam mirala ko ikala diamo nyen wala la case nyen ak komi politiko da bulata ko no bakele
It was not simply a case of owing the customs and the ports
manke
charges and duties.
manke nun doron tiko ka foko anyanta joru kala custom le anyanta ko dole jola no ji anin porota manke no wodoronti
Which was the major tenor of his charges.
dunia jibe ya tumi min fon la je wala fon gina warta je bake
And the interference
dabulo
with the judiciary.
dabulo me ka ke kitindir bundal
Could you, as far as you know, tell us how that was done?
at fanya bang wo keno nyaadi la ni tela londo de mel lonje ke dabulo men ke na kitindir bundal
I never worked with the judiciary,
nanin kiti de bunda mang do ko kade
but we've had stories
bari nga kuma ko ngol moy la fana
of directives being given to judges,
min walen president ka ya marro di kiti ndir lala
and basically judges being compromised.
no ka tinna kiti ndir lali nyanta kila do ko kan nyama mboka keno wanya
Compromised how?
comprend ke sondi nyaadi
Basically to either convict
min wala nyinti ko ye soron loi muta
or to impose sentences that are beyond reasonable.
wala kes ka foko loi ya bulole kan nyanta ke la kasolto nyala mi yala ko ni ajibe wo fonga manyana kake
But we understand,
bari nga nyim faham le ko
at least from statements,
me kuma kan to
that the NIA actually infested
NIA le fanan keta molde men ya lon ko
the High Court during some of these politically charged
ke
trials.
dabula nyin kiti yol to me alon ko nyin politika kiti bumda kiti bal me alon ko ke je NIA ke dabula je
Yes, certainly.
wala
What would be the impact of that
ne kana ke kole akoti wo kono ni wol keta
on judges?
jojol kan kiti telal kan
In my view, I mean,
tela jeroto
I would not say that the presence of the NIA in the court premises
comme ka fo doron NIA do kulal itatanu kiti dula nyim fon kono wala kiti oto je
was the factor that played on the minds of judges.
o keta fennati mi alon ko waka fenne dundi kiti tela kumoto
Because these were operatives
ato nyul mo mollete mi alon ko do kulal le moyti
who probably people didn't even know were NIA agents. I think they were there just to report on the atmosphere. And basically who was there and who was not there. To show solidarity to people who were charged, probably. I don't think that's where the influence on judges came from, in my humble view.
But within their open presence, help indicate executive interest and therefore instill fear on the minds of judges.
Like I said, I do not think that these were people who were openly recognized or known by everybody to be NIA, unless if the judge probably has some other way of finding out or knowing. Because these were low-level operatives, like I said.
Human rights reports suggest that in several cases, a judge would receive a call and would come out of chambers and hand down a ridiculous decision. The Commission has heard of court-martial's pronouncements by judges indicating that there is no evidence against a particular person. The judge receives a call and soon after comes back and sentences the person who just moments ago had no evidence against him, but is sentenced to long terms of imprisonment.
Yes, those were stories that we all had, and and there is no reason to believe that they were not true. Knowing the nature of some of the judges.
Can you expand on that? And I underline the nature of some of these judges.
I believe we spoke about the tag of mercenary judges. Who had no compunction to do things that will please the president. Even if they do not receive directives. Less of when they have received directives.
We have received information about a magistrate Kayode. Who imposed outrageous bail conditions. Which were clearly unattainable by the suspects who were brought before him. Such as requiring a former inspector, retired inspector general of police to come and give bail, sign a bail bond for you, or a former CDS of the army.
Abe kono o mari nyu tumiri monyi ngo magistrate bail sarto mendi follow ay mendi wala nyindi ko membe bail la jaita tumiri mo abe kala molti me ya lonko anana keta police wala nyaton ko kaf me IGP waranto ay ke moti me ya lonko anana keta soldier wala nyaton ko kaf me CDS
or a permanent secretary.
Waranto ay ke moti me ya lonko anana keta permanent secretary.
Onerous conditions that he knew that the suspect would not be able to satisfy.
Andung ata kiti tela nyi ayo lonne ko tumiri monyi ate yo bail result to mendi yala ate ya lonne ko tumiri monyi ate ultim mandino ate mafano la.
Which in reality would amount to constructive denial of bail.
Wala nyindi ko don fero don ayo la tendela katung wala nyindi abalantela don ka bail diala.
Yes, I believe that was part of the systematic, desire to deny people bail who are facing the most trivial of offenses.
Lata ko kuol tartanun lari wala nyama do ko ka wala nyama no wato pour que mol bali millialon ko imam pare pour wala bail sota anda traye samba kiti wala.
If I recall right,
natana hakilo sa mano kendeke
even the Honorable Halifa Sallah
Honorable Halifa Sallah
faced such onerous bail conditions in one of the trials that he was subject to. And as you've rightly stated, that is basically saying you are given bail, but you will not go free.
And it's also alleged that some would do the most outrageous, as in admitting confessionary statements that were not even signed by independent witnesses, and a judge in question is Abeke.
Mudol fawol beje me alon ko ka tumirol lega ka kuma kan sotebul me alon ka sotebul de tole kon andu ni samba kiti wala bana o tumirol nyim fan dol beje me alon ko ben kawo nyinin ka jojo do membe ko magistrato ikafa Abeke.
In the case of William John Juve,
misal fe ke mo kilin beje ala case ka me William John Juve.
Are you aware of that?
Yo kala mutale ba.
I can't recall. What I can say is that there was a trio of magistrates.
Mosaba.
Who were notorious, bending all known rules of procedure, or impose outrageous sentences. You've identified Abeke. You've identified Kayode. I think there's another one called Magistrate Alagbe. And like I said, these are all people who are, if I would be allowed to use that word, hustlers.
They were hustlers.
Hustlers, okay.
They were not technical assistants. So probably that explains.
In fact, Abeke and Alagbe are reputed to have remanded everybody arranged before them.
Afotala ko momo morondi yalan ko ye tumi ye nati tol nyati lingola ike samba mail to wala ke samba remand,
especially in cases where there was the slightest tinge of executive interest.
surtout me yalan ko tumi do keso dol me yalan ko o mari ni ya nati nyati lingola andun so bo beje ko executive la na sulo beje wala mi santon ko ti mansala karola wala sulo so da kes ni kono jama o mari ni ka samba remand ne folo.
Like I said, I wouldn't put anything past them.
Were they that bad?
Yes. I would not be able to confirm each and every one of the cases that they handled. But I won't deny anything that I hear which is outrageous that they did.
bari nde balanna kula mi yalan koy koytolle wala ka wala landa tambe kuwati.
It is even suggested that as judges they took direct instructions from former Chief Justice Ajim.
Ko nyim futale fanan ko tumala mena tolbe mu joji e be joji mu joji woltenu e ka kangota former Chief Justice le wolam ajimti
on disposition of cases.
wolam nyinti be kitio dol kuntula nyame.
Like I said, I won't put anything past them.
So you suggesting therefore that they were so bad?
Amunta ita kame vola nyinti ko ket mollal kiti tela le mutu mealon ko mo jawbal le mutinu.
That they would do all these terrible things like taking direct instructions from Chief Justice.
Kunyum kujawbal tala ya kala mo ka memu tumiri moti kata ka kum ka yamaro ta Chief Justice bulan kitindir lal bela nyaron ko banko kanja o wadola.
And deliberately flouting well-known rules of procedure.
Unte ya kan isi sartol men yalon ko atele wala nyana marling wala be marling kitio nyin tamando nyola isi sawo sartol la ye ni dial tamandaka.
Just to satisfy the executive interest?
I would say they would do anything that would help them maintain their contracts.
Mba fola ko itol ibe ku kala kaje ko dorong e do ko mi yalan ko ya dila wakana tay bulu wo e continue wo do ko nyen.
They deserved the title mercenary judges.
Munta kay pour moya fay mercenary judges wala jojol kiti telal me alon ko ye jole pour yena ka kiti ote nyala me alon ko anintili mo manta pour ronka mol nya se wondi men yalon ko wolle ta do ko amunta a jarata la pour ke kumandi wotola.
Indeed.
So abhorrent was their conduct that they committed the greatest disservice to the Gambian people.
Kabe nyaaw nyaay na na nyimbara jawolta ka doku nyin doku ta mulu nyawolta ka la Gambian jamaka.
Correct.
Well,
these were not the only three.
Amanka nyimosa bodronte fo.
There were many more.
Jamal be jele ko tay men be koma.
Do you think it's worth the while
fo ya mirako a jarata lebang
to continue to have judges under such type of arrangement?
Ka jojol soto men ya lon ko be tala ni do ko la me ya lon ko be tala do ko la ni nyala me ya lon ko ngine fo ni nyala sifalla.
These hustler judges whose only loyalty was to their contracts.
Mel me ya lon ko nyindir la jojol le finde la bankol kan itata mane kata nyinindiro la yeta do ko ke jojol ti andu ila hamo munete ron ila miro to ka dame do jota wala nyindi ko ila contrat ko nyin abe nyala nyame anning ila contrat ko nyin abe jamfala nyame.
Certainly. I mean, we should never ever have judges who are not here except on technical assistance from other benches around the world.
Manyana sonna kitindi tela la kotek milialon ko ibe tarani banko le kanja ngeta bari mol milialon ko ibe balana banko kotongol le kan priena yenan demana kitindiro kunyala.
Mr. Chair, I have just two more topics to deal with. I should be able to finish them in 30 minutes, I believe. Do we take the break now and return after 1 hour, or do we continue and finish for the day? I have no other witness for today.
Is the witness number strong enough to continue for the next 30 minutes?
Yes,
the seat is not too hot.
Fine, let's go for the next 30 minutes and then call it a day.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
But where, can I just ask one quick question? Where was the Bar Association in all this crazy situation that was going on in the country? Or did the Bar Association comprise majority foreigners?
Yaman kami nyini ka wala nyindi ko na nyin loya ka fo e tolbe dum minto le wato mena nyin ku jawol bebe kala na banko kanjang.
Well, Mr. Chair, we setting the tone for the Bar Association to come and respond to all these things.
I want to hear from him first, and then the Bar Association will hear their response.
Indeed, indeed. Thank you very much. Mr. Marena, could you have a go on that?
Yes, thank you.
Marena,
I think the bar did its part.
njikitala ko ni loya ka fo ni waliye takele de.
In fact, there were circumstances
Ngsa fo ka fan watil sototala ni fan
where the bar boycotted
ni loya ka fo ni ye da bondi
the courts of certain judges
comme kitindila dol la kiti dulato
in reaction to some of the outrageous things that some of these judges did.
comme pour que jabir ke ko la mi yalan ko wollebe ke kan landa tambe ko mi yalan ko wollebe ke kan.
I can recall there was a boycott of Justice Paul's court at one point.
No haglo bulata la wati sotota no nyin loya ka fo ni ye foñole kata Justice Paul la kiti dulato.
So the bar did try to do what it can.
Ya je bafana ye ferobe kele de nyin loya ka fo nyin.
But I believe it was swimming against the tide.
Dori njegeta ko ama ko nyi manna benno le don.
There was little they could do
Ima kundinding isa wole keno nun dorong
beyond issuing statements,
ka to ata tambila no ka kuma kangol bondi kibarol.
and in extreme cases,
Donc kuati dol fongo bije keso dol to
boycott the courts,
ke da bondi kiti o fongo kuoto.
which also had its consequences on their litigants and their
And
clients.
dum fana ni oke wo fana kana ku dole ku kolen dole wulu mol kamiyalan ko tol fana be lori wolle kiti o bundato.
But I believe if the bar president comes in,
Bari njikita ko mi itol fongo la kafo president o nanata.
you'll probably be able to say some of the other efforts that were made by the bar.
Aba ferol folale ifo fana e ferol minke wo wato nyin kono al kafo nyin.
In reaction to some of these, abnormalities.
Jabiri ke nyin kuol la mi yalan ko be ke kan andi mantara ke kan no ani silola.
Thank you. Council, you may continue.
My counsel.
But this conduct was not just limited to the judges.
Bare nyim baro nying amandam jojol rondo.
The magistrates were also involved.
Magistrate or wala nying kiti bundandi wala kiti ndir lal fana.
But judges
Bare jojol.
who resisted the executive interference
Men kabala nying kangola me alon ka bosantole.
or disregarded what may have been executive interest
Warando kabala ka foko wala be kele santon ko la nafati.
and followed the law
Kafbula ye bulal wa noma.
were also dealt with very badly.
Wal fana keta molden me alon ko e mate la nyala me alon ko ajawiyata bake.
Was that true?
Fo mu to nyalti ba.
Very true.
Tonya ba
Can you give us examples?
Isi misalo di non na wotole ba.
We have been told about some situations
Ye la al halo do dinna jam misal fi
or instances like the Omar Jabang instance, which you raised earlier,
men kamunta ko Umar Jaban na case ko yemen fo jam ko man tonu
and there was Samsidin Conte,
anin samsidin konte fana na case
Birkama Magistrate Court.
me yalon ka be birkama la kiti
There
bundandi
was
wonto
also Ibrahim Jaite.
andum Ibrahima Jayte fana na case mo fana mo misalo dolti
There was this former Chief Justice Chauhan.
anin kiti ndirlal be la nyaton ko wala mo Chief Justice Chongkan
Chauhan. And Justices Raymond Sock and
Justice
and
Raymond
Dibujani.
Sok
Could you dilate on these examples?
isi nyi misalo lo isi fanundi nyonye bang die kulon igala foldo
Certainly,
am sa fo no
there has been many brave and patriotic judges and magistrates
sa fo no ko kiti tela so do mi yalan ko jambarol le muti andi hanyite la do ko la
who, like you've rightly stated,
mi yemel fo nyen ten
followed the law to the letter,
ka bula luwa no mala fa dandulato
did not allow themselves
man song pour ye kerini no kula
be swayed by political interest
a foko dolong politiko fanala
or executive excesses.
wala ka foko comme president wala karo fanala
Because the Omar Jabang you've rightly mentioned,
comme yemi fo Omar Jabang la kuoto
I believe his dismissal
comme ila bayo ni lata ko
from the bench
a bondi ala do ko nyinto ka kiti ndiriato
was in reaction to a judgment he gave.
ni aje wo keta ay kuntur la kenno kiti dola
Few judgments, I believe,
lata ko kuntun din dol bijele
one of which was the Andy Carroll case,
wal dabije andi karol diamoni
who used to be the Deputy Accountant General, I believe,
ko mum molete mi alon ko deputy accountant general le matino
and was charged for some economic crime, offense.
Ya tumi ko komen banko la na fulo Kenya ay wala dundi nyoto.
Because he acquitted on discharge her.
Nata na bula ako itan murundi no la wo kiti yola ya nati min nakote.
I recall Omar Jabang also dealt with the case of Yusuf Saidi.
Aglo fana bulata Omar Jabang aketa multimi atele kata kiti ndirlati minata Yusuf Saidi la kiti yoto.
And he also did acquit him.
Wo fana aya bula ko ita murundi no la ya tumi min nakote.
Because much to the chagrin of, the president.
Wo man tara diaru no president onye.
And his dismissal had to do with some of these decisions that he did make.
Ando ala bayo miya sababu wala nyin kuntondrol miya lanka ake nyin kiti yol toteng.
And one hallmark of the judiciary is security of tenure, which is critical for independence of judges. Correct?
Yes.
And this dismissal is just an attack to that principle.
Certainly. In fact, I did hear at one point President Jammeh himself
President Jammeh Fong
say he doesn't believe in the independence of the judiciary.
Man la ko kiti bunda nying ila ye fansoto le be lori fayen
That he pays the judiciary.
Kuma teleka judiciary jo.
You cannot have independence when they are being paid by the government.
Ko ite fantar ite tarano e fambulu yelo e fayen na tara ite kete jole man sale kete jo.
So I think
was he reminded that he had it all upside down? He had no clue who was paying the judges. It is the taxpayers of this country. It is the people of the Gambia.
Well, I wish somebody had reminded him of that. Except that he is a proponent, I believe, of the French acronym of L'État, c'est moi, is it? They call it.
Which is the equivalent of a dictatorship.
That the state, he believed himself to be the embodiment of the state. And Ibrahim Ajaite, magistrate, Ibrahim Ajaite, who is now a justice.
Ibrahim Ajaite, owato amanke kiti kuntul blabati, no owato amu magistrate oltino.
Also suffered similar consequences. I recall it related to, one of the dictas of Jammeh that people should pray on a particular day, or Korite or Tobaski.
Akilo blatala komin Jammeh fongola kuma kongolto kafoko komin nin salo sita sunkar salo le wala banna salo lungo nyanta sodola mia wolungo fomole sali wolunga.
And that whoever prayed on a different date would face the full force of the law. Or his law. And you had this sheriff from somewhere in the West Coast. I can't remember which, but is it Dasilame also? Who led his people to pray on a different date to the date that Jammeh had pronounced, or the Supreme Islamic Council had pronounced. As ridiculous as it sounded, he was arrested by the police and charged. Magistrate Ibrahim Ajaite acquitted him. And he was dismissed. Samsudin Conte, you referred to as well. I believe he was dealing with the case of Said Matijau, who was working with the University of the Gambia. He was involved in some research, and as a result of which he was charged for I mean, some offense relating to the research that he was carrying out.
So wo kisikisiro kabra bala abado ko nyin kono natana tumi wo kisikisiro nyin fanala.
He was charged and brought before Samsudin Conte.
Natana tumi ya natina kitindi tela la kafumi Samsudin Conte.
Again, he was acquitted.
Fana ya bula ikuita murini no ya tumi ro milla kan koten.
And the young magistrate also was given his marching orders.
Wo kitindi tela ndingo nyin natana fa ko ay bo.
But not only were they given marching orders, they were also subject to harassment by way of arrest.
Among Kenyan Ranka, later on, Ranka for ye baile, Abuka da water, Ikanana, Buloli Fanan, Ibulo Lake and Nefanan, Warandoke, Malundi.
Indeed, I believe both Jabang and Samsiding were subject to police detention.
Kon lata ko Samsidin anin Jabang be police ol bulo late kanne inane maboleno.
But this was not only limited to magistrates. Tell us about Chief Justice Chauhan.
Chief Justice Chauhan
in 2005, after they dealt with the 2015, after they dealt with
2016
the Langtombong Tamba and Sajo Fofana case.
Biring Langtombong Tamba and Sajo Fofana Kitio Biri Mata Wala Pareta.
When they handed down a decision that was not favorable to the Jame government.
Biring Walnat na Kitio Nyum Kuntu Bari Kitio Ni Tolia Kuntu Nyameng Amanke Kunturinyat Meya Lonko Yaya Jamela Masakunda Ning Amoya Dian Yukuoti.
I believe for Jame, it made no difference, I mean, whether it was a magistrate court or a Supreme Court.
Among Abuka Fatam Fancy Jibe for magistrate court and for Kitty Badulani in Supreme Court.
In that case, the Langtombong Tamba case,
Langtombong Tamba and La Diamoni.
Langtombong and Sajo Fofana, I believe, were convicted of treason.
Langtombong in Sajo Fofana, yes, Luae Bulo like Kanako Jamfa Jaola Citino.
And at the Supreme Court,
Kitty Ba Ninto, Gambia.
And they were sentenced to death.
Natafoko Yantake Fale.
And of course, on appeal at the Supreme Court,
and Kabri Natanel Kitionin Senkan Jube Kafodam Supreme Court Cotton.
Their lawyer, I believe it was Sheriff Tambedu,
Latako Wato Mimbe lawyer Carola Sheriff Tambedu,
rightfully argued
Natana Kaitan Dirokai
that under the Constitution,
Banko Lua Banyan Koto,
a person can only be sentenced to death
Mo Inyantaka Foko Lua Nyantaka Fale, Minyantako Tina Wella Nyantiko.
If his conduct led to the death of another individual.
Natara Manyake Mia Tina Wonata Tina Modo Fana Fata.
Since the alleged coup d'etat did not result in any death, therefore they could not be subject to a death penalty. The Supreme Court agreed with the submission. And I believe they were, the death sentence was replaced with a life in prison. Certainly, Jame didn't take kindly to that. And the Chief Justice then was a Pakistani national. And the other justices, Justice Jibujane, and Justice Raymond Sok, were all dismissed. I believe the other judges were foreign judges. They had come from other countries. Interestingly, this was the decision that led to Jame's downfall. Because this was the decision which made us have no Supreme Court. In 2016, when he lost the election, he filed an appeal before the Supreme Court. But there were no judges to hear the appeal. And that's why we all saw on television when he called Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, the then president of Liberia, pleading he should prevail on, I think, some Nigerian judges who he had identified to come and hear or to constitute the Supreme Court.
Min kata Nigerian kiti tela dolta milialan ko wolle binatara wo kiti bumba nyinto purka atele ayo kiti ayo kuma kongol min dundi pour wol se jiber ke wala.
So sometimes, like I said, if you're digging a hole,
wala na wato dol bi jenko ni be dinko sinna.
Don't dig it too deep.
Kana dinko singa jamfa.
But this one was a hole too deep.
Bari nyemu dinkalati mialan ka jamfata bakale fo.
It may have been possible
ato asikeno
for that election result to be overturned
pour wo kiti wo carte fo men keta ya yelemandi
with the right judges
na tara kiti telal min nyanta tara no jebi
in court.
Indeed, Chief Justice Chauhan left the jurisdiction in 48 hours.
Okannam Chief Justice Chauhan inarana bay banko kanjang kana tambi trifula lafa.
Jammeh left the jurisdiction few weeks after the election. But this was just not the only time he has so blatantly and directly interfered with judges who gave decisions that were not favorable. The present Chief Justice had once served as a judge of the Supreme Court.
Chief Justice sorry.
And I do believe wrote the opinion on the immunity provisions, which were declared unconstitutional.
Ndum fana adablota mol kono mi yalan ko wolle saferke e ka fani loi mi yalan ko e ka fa immunity mi yalan ko anyanta ka lonu bari manata.
What happened to him during that time?
No, certainly, like you've rightly pointed out. I think it was Kemes and Jammeh who challenged the constitutionality of the amendments to the Constitution. I believe around the year 2000 or so. 2001 thereabout.
2001.
And of course, the current Chief Justice
Chief Justice
gave the lead judgment and upheld the challenge. Declared the amendments to the immunity clause unconstitutional.
And he was dismissed.
Yes, he was dismissed thereafter.
But even Justice Monaghan
and Justice Monaghan
and Justice Izauko were both forced to leave after giving decisions that were not favorable to the Jammeh regime.
I would add to that, I think there was also another Ghanaian Chief Justice.
Chief Justice
I've forgotten her name, lady Chief Justice.
Yes.
Ajiman.
Ajiman, yes. Justice Ajiman.
Justice Ajima
also had to leave the country under very difficult circumstances. In fact, I think she went into hiding just before leaving. And in fact, the Ghanaian government was very unhappy about that. And I think that has been the reason why they've been very reluctant to actually send technical assistance to Gambia.
With our own local judges or magistrates, they get arrested and detained.
And the banko kanjana jojo na banko dingo me alanko jojo le ani magistrate ol fanan keta molel me alanko ye mutale ki sindi dula killing.
We examined the case of Jaite.
La kumo ko nyinga jubele.
There may have been a mistake. Jaite's removal and detention had to do with the transfer of a case, a discharge of the accused persons and transfer of the case to another jurisdiction from Birkama to Bundung, which was found unfavorable.
Magistrate jaite wala bondo ngam mem faham je wala nyindi ko ay case dole so taranum sotonum Birkama magistrate court ayo case nyindeta aya bondi Birkama aya saundi nang bundung kadu nyinkama ko bundung Birkama kiti bunda nyimban sembo so pour ko case nyinta wala tin ayo saundi nang bundung nga kala muta ko yata bondi o dalilo le kam.
You are right, that may have been the immediate trigger.
Wala ite yemen for walem o sekeno kutele mi an ko tarinke wala
that must have come really hot on the heels of this other judgment.
But the Dasilame Sangajo case is believed to have been handled by Magistrate Cham, wasn't it?
Dasilame Sangajo la kiti onying mo lara nyina ko Magistrate Cham wale o.
It's Jaite as far as
it's Jaite as well as far as you know. But nonetheless, these are all interferences with the judiciary.
Nyao kera nyao nyara nyimbe mu barande me yalon ko dabulo lam ye menke na kiti bunda la fanala.
But not only that, there's been several instances of suggestions of bribery of witnesses by state institutions with regards to cases where the state had an interest. What do you say about that?
I did hear about that here at the commission. To be frank, I had not heard of that before. I mean, bribery by the office of the DPP or the prosecutors. But having heard that it happened or it was done by DPP Chenge, I cannot confirm the veracity. What I can say is that DPP Chenge was very desperate to make his mark in this country. And he was, in effect, a Machiavellian.
Could you break that down for us?
A Machiavellian is a person who is willing to do anything, whatever it takes.
Including violating the law?
When we say do anything, it literally means anything in order to get to his end. Yes, and so I will not be surprised, or I will not refute that possibility.
Well, witnesses have accused him personally of bribing them in order to obtain particular testimony. In several cases, including, I believe, the Langtombong Tamba case, and possibly was it the Ndur Cham case.
Like I said, I mean, Chenge even had issues with his team of technical assistants that he came with from Nigeria. And there were accusations that he even reported them on, spurious allegations against, in their home country. He didn't get along with even his own people.
ate fongo kundunga nala mol fongo manakeno.
Because he was so fixated
Kataka cool jele dorong
on doing things that he felt, was going to really, catapult him into, the good books of the regime.
Cool ke mi yalon ko wol batinala ko ibajela ko kate abala do ko ke kana anyata nyame mol mi ko mi mol la karola mi wala sija.
That much I can say about it.
So fono ala fanala back.
But there was also this special litigation team that was at the Ministry of Justice.
Kafo do fana be me alon ko be lori fa yenne wi ka fa special litigation team me alon ko be ministry member mare lual de tinu Kenya.
Who were paid differently.
Ni alon ko kejo karalla.
What can you tell us about that?
Ita simuna fona nyawol fana na ko.
Like I said, the Ministry of Justice has been a long-standing recipient
Ministry of Justice akeda dinkra de mi yalan ko ka sotondil ke no le non
of technical assistance,
mo la mi yalan ko wolle kana de maro di banko la jam,
especially from the Republic of Nigeria.
katuma banko min jogam Nigeria banko.
And these were people who were sent by the government.
Nyul kaka mo le de mi yalan ko man sakunda le ke kina.
But sometime around 2010,
Bari wati sotola nun 2010 sango kono.
before that, these technical assistants
Gani wo fongo nyi mol mi yalan ke kina pour de maro la Gambia jam.
are normally paid by their government.
Da man sakunda le ke jo.
And of course, the Ministry of Justice would only pay them the local allowances applicable to locally paid staff.
Coming Ministry of Justice welcoming kadron ekela alawanso lejo komi ka joro kenyame mo la miyanko wal mo Gambia dimo be do ko.
Around 2010 thereabout,
In 2010 ma fon la kata wala.
we suddenly saw a team of 3 prosecutors,
Natana je
lawyers.
kitindir lal miyanko loyal le moti mo saba
from Nigeria
botana Nigeria banko kan
who were not sent on technical assistance.
may kinan koy natana de marole di Gambia masakunda.
How they came into the country,
Natana nyam nyim banko kan jang.
was not known to me at
O
least.
mdamo long no.
But they were called the Special Litigation Team.
Bari natane kumandi ko tolle multi million ko kitindiro ka kanyame yeto lollondi wo fanala.
And they had their own package, so to speak.
Inataja ko to fonla joro yo ko afayen.
They were answerable to the Attorney General
Ke danko attorney general lama
rather than the DPP.
nyante danko la DPP la bari ke danko attorney general.
And then all the politically sensitive cases that were going on at that time
Wato kono diamol mi yalan ko be kiri and political dabe bulari nga kono.
were mostly assigned to this state.
Ke di to lela wo kesi solni.
Do you know where they were paid from? Was it from Ministry of Justice?
Yalo na ila jo kapo dame ndama po ila jo akabo ministry bunda lo me alon ko atel mari lual ni tilingo la ba.
I can't recall exactly whether they received anything from the Ministry of Justice,
Kilo mamutano fo ika fen soto nang Ministry of Justice la fanala.
but certainly, it was believed that they were actually paid by outside of the Ministry of Justice, let's say.
Natana lono ko komi ke jole
Outside of the payroll of the Ministry of Justice.
komi Ministry of Justice ila joro ka darani bundamin.
What does that mean? Can you break that down for us?
Koto mo munati fo CJ fatam fansinya ba.
Well, the Ministry of Justice have got a payroll.
Yeah, the Ministry of Justice wole dulale soto miyalan ko joro be ka bona waldo.
Basically, consisting of all the staff of the ministry,
Komi wolbe dabije momo miyalan ko ebe do ko la wodin kranyin to je
their remuneration.
ila joro to.
But it was alleged at this time that
Ni wato inatana tumiro lako.
this special litigation team
Ni mol miyalan ko ka fo le special litigation team.
were actually paid different from the allowances and the remuneration that council received at the Ministry of Justice.
Ke joy fayen ila joro karifa jo anika alawansi sol mendi la.
There was an allegation.
Ina tumiro fana be ke
Not seen their pay slip.
me majere ke la jo kaito ni nyamo.
They were actually paid in dollars.
Bari ke iko ko jo ni anin
But
dollar
that I
ko.
cannot verify.
But
By-
mo senen.
Kabo juma
I wouldn't know where exactly the payment is coming from,
Malong ko joro ni kabonan dami.
certainly.
Was it not alleged that they were paid in dollars by the president? Yaya Jammeh.
Fonyina mange tumiroti nun ko ike joni dollar le andungo joni akabo dame do wala ndo president Yaya Jammeh.
Yes, that's the allegation.
Wala tumiroti.
As Solicitor General, do you believe that that was regular and that was legal?
Itela miralo do kake fumala mena itela mun Solicitor General tino ite amira ko o mu kuler mi alon ko anyanda labang andunga ni luwata labang.
I'm not sure that's the right translation. I was in the Solicitor General at the time.
Yes, but as a former Solicitor
Yes,
General.
no, I want to correct the translation.
Solicitor General.
No, certainly. I mean, that would not be regular. All persons working under the umbrella of the Ministry of Justice
Ministry of Justice
must be under the payroll of the Ministry of Justice.
Ministry of Justice
Either as a local staff or as a technical assistant.
At least as a minimum, they should be paid from funds appropriated or approved by Parliament.
Munta futa nyaaw nyarande nyaama to fanana jo nyana nyana bola dula to me alon ko jole me alon ko ministre na député bunnan ko ye budgeto men di ministry member de loi nin tilingola itol fanana nyina jo nyana bola wolto.
That's why I said they should be on the payroll, because the payroll presupposes that it's from the budget of the Ministry of Justice appropriated by the Parliament.
Because niko payroll wala joro ka bonandam and wo joro aka bonamuntola akata deputy bungotola na botaje aita ministry yalanko wala marin de paso kenyala dena na futantolma.
So these special prosecutors were just the flip side of the hustler judges.
Amunta nyinki tindirla me alon ko be fayene to fana mu molle de to me alon ko e ninni jojol me alon ko e nyindirla jojole ka fa hustler joji to be mu bebe fanke kilun wala kono.
I would agree with that.
And they carried out some of the most abhorrent prosecutions.
Wato do e kayin kiti jawol tale me alon ko e kawol to le kawol kitindi.
That happened during those days. You agree with that?
Certainly. I mean, I think that was the purpose. Why they had to be specially recruited.
But Jammeh did not do this without any support. He certainly would have needed personnel in key institutions to help him do this. What do you say to that? I am looking in particular to paragraph 3 of your statement.
Yes, that's very true. I think Jammeh treated the Ministry of Justice like he treated all state institutions. Meaning, he would make sure that he has trusted persons. A lot of times people he probably has a personal relationship with. And make sure that they man key positions in these state institutions. And of course, effectively that would mean that they would be his eyes and ears. And they would probably have direct contact and access to him. I think it was part of the wider strategy of divide and rule, basically. So suddenly, both at the Ministry of Justice and probably at the Judiciary as well, Jammeh made use of the personal relationships he had with lawyers. I mean, to basically make sure that he is able to have full control
saja se mararo mume bekeno
over, I mean, these legal institutions?
do ku fana do dinkral mi yalon ko ka do ko kanen loi fanal.
Like you have in the prisons a David Colley,
men kamonta ko na kase bumba to nga David Colley soto je
who would do whatever he wanted,
me yalon ko aka ko ke me yalon ko atela fita walla.
and then you have, is it a Yankuba Baji at the NIA,
ina na Yankuba Baji fanan soto membe nung NIA
to do what he wanted,
ko ke men diata e
and to have an Usman Sonko
ina na Usman Sonko fanan soto
as Minister of Interior,
me yalon ko atela mun minister me yalon ko abe banko kono
to
jang
do what he wanted,
ka ko me yalon ko atela fita walla.
and to have an IGP
Anun kana ay police la nyaton ko fanan
and
soto
a Chief of Staff
ani me yalon ko sojaro la nyaton ko
and
fanan
a Solicitor General
anu me yalon ko atela be la solicitor
and a
general
Minister of Justice
minister me yalon ko atela mare loi
and a
ni
Chief
wala
Justice
ani kitindir la be fanan
and a
nyaton
few
ko
judges
ni kitindir la ko tangol la
do what he wanted.
ko ke me yalon ko atela fita wala ta yaya
Dictatorship A101, letter A moi.
sembela maralo rong.
Thank you very much for your testimony.
C'est vraiment dommage. Alors, oh, sorry. I was saying it's a pity that the state was reduced to that. Louis XIV, l'état c'est moi. Thank you very much, Mr. Marena, for your testimony.
Abaraka bake Mr. Marena ila kuma kangol jang.
Very informative and quite engaging. Thank you so much again for coming to testify.
Ila kuma kangol nga fahamle nga moyle abaraka bake ila na jang kanila kuma kangol di.
Commissioners, if you have any questions, please indicate. Imam C, you have the floor, please.
Imam C, wala kane nyininka.
Mr. Marena jërëjëf.
Mr. Marena, thank you.
Sa xam-xam bu rafet ak leeral bi nga leeral ni.
Your knowledge that you have dispersed here.
Dafa am li may laaj.
I have a question to ask you.
Affaire yi atte yi.
Based on the, the court proceedings.
Surtout ñi nekk ci kaso bi.
Especially those who are in custody.
Biñ fa demee gis nañ fa ñi nga xamante ne am nañ seen atte bi dem na fukki at ba fukki at ak juróom.
When we visited the prison, we have realized that there were some people whose case were on up to 10 years now or more.
Ñaari fukki at pareegul.
Up to 20 years, still now their cases are still pending.
Ak ci biir dëkk bi itam.
And also in the country here,
am na ñi nga xamante ne dangay ñëw ci lawyer waxtaan ak moom.
there are some people, they will come to the lawyer and discuss.
Li nga war a def yëpp nga def ko.
All what you're supposed to do, you will do them.
Benn kayit du des.
No document will left behind.
Waaye sa atte bi dafay dem fukki at.
But your trial will go more than 10 years.
Ngay dox de dem.
You will go going, coming.
Ba mu mat fukki at doo ci am dëgg doo ñàkk doo am.
Up to 10 years, you are going and coming, and you will not get the truth, and you will not get nothing out of it.
Man loolu moo ma jaaxal la bëggoon nga leeral ñu depuis nguur Yaya Jammeh ba léegi loolu moo fi.
This is something that really puzzled me, and I would want you to clear the air for us, since the government of Yaya Jammeh up to date.
Thank you, Imam.
Abaraka Imam.
I'll probably speak in English and you do the translation because it's quite technical question.
Okay, sir.
There are a lot of factors.
Kujama lebije.
No, I think he speaks Wolof, right?
Somebody is interpreting for
you. Okay, all right. Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of factors responsible for, I mean, the delays in the court cases. One of the, I mean, causes is the lack of adequate judges. I mean, and as a result, you find that individual judges are overloaded. And so the cases take a long time to, I mean, be decided. And sometimes also
wato dol fana bije
when there is a change in the judge that is presiding over a case,
yaje natare nata falindir ke kitindir la follow ni mimbije ni o bondije.
I mean, the new judge that comes into a case,
Kiti yemun nata je kutake kitindir la kutonyin.
if it's a criminal trial,
Natare fenne miyalon ka maria ku jawole ka na bani mansala tema.
the new judge can actually order a trial de novo, the trial to start again.
Wo kitindir la kutama ka muna fo wala nyindi komi kiti yo nyinga be dati ku poten.
Because that is allowed under the rules.
At wo sartol sonta wala.
Another factor
Udo fana bije
is the very manual way of, recording proceedings.
walem komi nin kiti yo be ke kan ika saferol min ka bulola.
For instance, in the TRRC here,
Mi yaje san jang TRC jang.
it would not have been possible
Te kela no fang ate benna no
if this was a normal court
na tara ya kele ko kitindir dinkilarem doron.
for me to be able to give this evidence
Biri yaje ko ngagnin kitin ngagnin kuma kongol min be fo jang ka fo.
within this short period of
Ka
time.
fo doro wati sutun kon.
Because our courts are still using the manual handwriting system.
Katu yaje ko na kiti bunda ni hani sang ebe minta ka wolem bulma safero ni ko leta nin kiti ndirobe keka.
And that causes a huge delay
Du wole ka sabu tarde bal ka kisodo.
in the speed at which trials proceed.
Min kiti oni nyanta tariya la nyama bukana tariya wa nyama.
That is a big factor.
Wo fana mu ku balde mi yo ku wol sababu ndi kiti yo bukana.
Another factor is
Do fana bije mi yalon ko.
the endless adjournments
Mi ka saundirol min ke kiti yolla.
that are sought by both defense lawyers
Min ko saundirol min fana sabundi wolem lawyer nying min bi yalon ko yobi wole nati kiti yolla nan lawyer mi yalon ka nata ka do bondi kiti yo nyin kono ka seniyandi.
and prosecutors
Ni mi yalon ko wolle fana be kiti ndiro nyin ke kam.
or lawyers appearing for plaintiffs.
Wala wato dol bije lawyer mi yalon ko be lori moye mi yalon ko wole mo nati kiti yolla.
So you find long adjournments being sought by lawyers
Ka jele ko lawyer le kana ka saundiro ke mi yalon ko ka wato ta ka jamfa.
because they have a lot of cases on their hands.
Atu ko min ko sababu ni wala nyinti diamu jamal wala kesi solti jamal be blokon.
So the cases take a long time to be concluded.
Wala katina janin kiti wol nyimbe banna ka wato ta.
Of course, for those people in remand,
Sa muinata molla karola mi yalan ko yes ibe riman.
another factor could be
Min se e wo sababu ndi wala nyinti ko
that when they are taken to remand,
ni e samba riman.
the police also may take a long time to conclude an investigation.
Police wol fana ka wati jantale pour ka ila kisi ro nyin ka dafa.
And unfortunately,
Andu wo kan
there is no system whereby after a case is filed in court and the person is remanded,
min sila tije wala tamandir bulu tije mi yalan ko komi natara ye dundir ke mola kiti ndiro la kiti bundata tara mari nyi ya samba riman.
the judges are able to review, those cases to make sure that the persons are brought back for trial.
Komi pour kiti ndir la se jiber ke wala wo diamo nyi na kaje ko ye murundi na ne koten ko kiti bundata.
So if you are not lucky to have a defense counsel,
So ni alaman ne de may man na lawyer so do mi yalan ko wolbe lole pour que bondi yetumi minna.
who can be going to court and raising your issues,
Mi yalan ko abe kala tara kiti bundal do kela ko wol foje
you will likely spend a long time in remand
ni asikeno ebe mela baka kaso bundato je.
because there is just no follow-up
Kadu ko mo mantara ye banta mi yalan ka blaka wo ko wol nyinno.
in your case.
Ila diamo fana.
There is also the National Agency for Legal Aid,
Bari bunda fana be keri na mi yalan ke ka fo legal aid
which is supposed to help indigent, the persons who are not able to afford, legal, practitioners or legal representation.
wala nyanta kala bunda te mi yalan ko ka lo mole mi yalan ko wol man loya ka loya joy ma soto no. Nyanta ka lo wo mole na.
But again, the institution is very much understaffed.
Bare sai wol be fana min to teng iman do kular soto mi yalan ko wol la nyanta nyin do ko wol nyin kala.
And as a result, they are not able to, deal with as many cases expeditiously as possible.
Wo dalilo nata tinna iman na dabula no case jamal kono komi nyanta ke dabula case sol kono.
So like I said, it's a real combination of factors,
Min sai ni nata jibe ba fula ko tonya fengol le mi yalan ko be ka futa nyomale.
which, contribute towards the delays in trials.
Milia lonko wole atina fokiti yo nyinga aka abukatar aka tardi abukatariano
In this country.
imbanko kanjang.
Thank you.
Abaraka.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Jones.
Commissioner Jones la kane nyininka.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Marena, for your testimony.
Abaraka Chairman, abaraka Mr. Marena, ila kuma kama yadi jang.
You've spoken extensively about at least 3 laws that Jammeh used to entrench himself in power.
Ya fole jang kende ke fon loi sabal la mi yalan ko President Jammeh President Kotoning wo loi sabol mi akole ta pour ka sembo dia fang.
And other than the criminal code, which the criminal offences bill, as you mentioned, is with Parliament or has been with Parliament since December 2019.
Me yemi for criminal code fanala mi yalan ka be palm ababa na député bongoto ka bring wo wato la.
I believe the other 2,
njegeta wo fula dol,
as well as several others, are still in use and could be used by any president, be it presently or in future, to entrench themselves in power.
Ning comme President dol satano ye muna fangala ni nata maralola. Fanala.
To the best of your knowledge, at least until the time you were Solicitor General.
For ite ya londo ni soto nyame fo kabri wato ni mu Solicitor General.
Do you know if there's any ongoing work to either amend or repeal some of these laws?
For ye londi soto la comme nyin luwal nying ibe ferol ka kanne pour ka nyin luwal bonde wala ke fali.
Well, like I said, I mean, the 2 laws, that is the false information law.
But coming after nyame nyin luwal mi yalon ko wala luwa bundalte mi yalon ko coming mo mi yalon ko ye fani ala fo.
And the provisions on abuse of office and negligence of official duties.
And dung mol mi yalon ko ke la doko ke kalan tambi andi yela inyante la doko ke la nyame iman na ka.
Are not separate laws per se.
Well, man ke luwal te mi yalon ko fatata nyola.
They're all in the criminal code.
Well, bebe nying criminal code luwa kono.
So the criminal code review
Sa nying criminal code pour ka jibe
has been able to take care of that.
wo nyanta ko wo ko nyimbe marale.
The economic crimes decree.
Nying economic crime nying decree nying wala ko mom fota luwa to.
I don't think there's any plan to, repeal it.
Mamela fere be laare mi yalon ko pour ka bondi.
Because like I said,
Ko mi ngafo no nyame.
it's a decree that has a good legislative intent.
Kadu luwa le mi yalon ko ya fo e dala ya londi andu ye ngani kendo le soto pour yolo luwa londola.
To deal with persons
Pour ka ma molla ko la mi yalon ko
whose criminal activity
mi yalon ko ela ku jaw kel nying.
has a great impact on the economy.
Yeah, I tora bala nati na fanko Kenya.
So it's a matter of application, really.
Sa mun beje nun doron wala en ka dunduri ke doron pour ka bondi.
Thank you.
Abaraka.
Thank you.
Thank you. Imam Jallo, you have the floor, please.
Mam Jallo kane nyininka.
Thank you. Witness,
Say
we know the 3 arms of government.
nying bulu sabol lon ne milia lon ko man sakunda ka tamani wollela.
Because this sector is very, very important in the country.
Luanin telingo Kenya wokuma ya batale banko kan.
What you last said about Jammeh's influence on both the bench and the bar.
Bari lata kuma kan labangol min fo komi ya Jammeh kay itandiro ko wala kamin dundi komi luala karola ani mol mi yalon ko wollem kiti telalti.
It seemed he used his powers assisted by the laws.
Akamuntalo ko akala sembo nyintale anu sembo nyinga akademaro soto luala fanala.
To twist the arms of all these individuals.
Kanyimol bulota ke be bulambula nyokon.
Genuinely,
Tonya.
do you think it is wise
To
still keep the executive to keep control of magistrates, judges, and other persons involved with the execution of the law in a country?
Thank
you.
Baraka.
Thank you, Imam.
Baraka Imam.
Certainly, there is always a danger when you subject judicial appointments to executive discretion. Even though in almost all countries around the world, judges are appointed by the president. But that must happen only with the sanction or recommendation of the Judicial Service Commission.
Bare wo fana na be kela aka tarre ka fo me Judicial Service Commission wol fana da bulata wo ko kono le tombondiro kono.
And so the influence that Jammeh had over the judiciary was as a result of a weakened Judicial Service Commission.
Judicial Service Commission wala multi-million ko loren judiciary doku lal tanya ke tanya min doku la wala dokoti.
If the Judicial Service Commission is adequately strengthened,
bare yaje na tara ko wo bundani ya tala ya fanundi ya warandi
ya sembentu ya, then certainly there will be less room for executive interference in the judiciary. Even though the president may have the ultimate executive authority to approve the appointments of judges. So I think the key really lies in a very strengthened Judicial Service Commission.
Judicial Service Commission la karola wala multi mialanko ka tombondiro ke molla miya nyanta ka dogo ko kitu ibunda fana to le martala.
Thank you.
Baraka.
Thank you very much. If there are no further questions, Mr. Marena, if you have any concluding remarks, you may please proceed to make them now.
Chairman koso na tara moti je mimbe nyinin kala kote sa so continue la ila kuma kan labangol di commission o nyati ngola jang.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Baraka bake, Mr. Chair.
I wouldn't say much.
Nte fenjama fola jang.
I did not prepare any concluding remarks. And I would probably avoid saying by saying it the sterling work that the commission is doing, because like I said, being one of the builders of the institution, that would probably amount to being a judge in my own cause.
So I'll
leave that for other people. But what I just want to say is that what has happened in the Gambia, which is the subject of this commission, is something that we all have to learn from. And I think the solution to never again doesn't only lie on the governance architecture of this country. I think it has to start with the people, and it has to end with the people. Jammeh was not omniscient. He was not omnipotent. He was not omnipresent. Can you come omnipresent? He wasn't everywhere. He only knew about things. He only made decisions most times based on what we the people told him. It was we the people that spied on each other, that ostracized each other, that labeled each other, that told Jammeh Mr. A is an enemy, Mr. B is a political opponent, Mr. C is doing A, B, and C. And of course, he exploited that. He would not have been able to do it without the sources of information that was coming to him sitting at State House. And some of this information especially was very, very malicious and wrong.
Andung yaje nyung kuma kongol mi yalan ka futema futama kuma kongol le mi yalan ko kumi mi yalan ka ngani jo sote do wala ka futa kuma kan sipal futandam.
So really, I mean, the never again has to start with us, the people of the Gambia.
Tonya ni sando ni ngakana ka kote wanyanta datilantol fongo hadama dingol
to strive to be good people,
kato beke ka jeko mo ngake mo kendolti,
to strive to be our brother's keepers,
ngake molti mi yalan ko mbanyo fasala doko nin koto,
to strive to be good neighbors to each other.
Kato beke ka jeko ngake sinyo kendolti nyoye.
If we do that,
ningo okay,
I mean, no president,
any president killing
would feel empowered
aba jela ko konte sembole bembulu
to basically subjugate the citizens.
Mi yalan ko aba banku dingol talaka kule kan.
Like I always tell myself,
Coming wato watinka fong kundingo ya nyaming.
The difference between Jame of 30th November
Yaje jame fatam fanso mi bekere jame November karo til tan saboni
2016
and
Jame of the 2nd December 2016.
Anin jame mi yalon ko wala mu jame to December karo telefulo in 2016.
It was the same Jame.
Wo jame kilingo damati.
Why was he so powerful on the 30th of November 2016?
Mona atina sembo soto num bake November karo til tan saboni in 2016.
And felt so powerless on the 2nd of December.
Andung kabrin December karo telefulo de longanata ko hani sembu tatela.
Because the people asserted their right.
Katuko hadama dingol banku dingol wole sembo wale la nyantul wale a londi.
The Gambians, bold, old and new, old and young,
Gambia dingol ke bal dindingol wo
stood up
ilota
and defended
ilota ka kantarke
the constitution
na bango loi buku bal
and the election results.
Andum fana karte fayo ni na resolution ni lota ka tankandi.
So even though he had attempted to reverse the results,
Na tara fanga kato be kele kaje ko cool falling resolution ni.
but because the Gambian people he saw was a different Gambian people he presided over for 22 years.
Katuko labanga anata na Gambia dingol minje atafunga ya akoita malako woni Gambia dingol fatatala nung kabrin sangomi yalanko nga bankota.
His attitude changed.
Ala daji ko falinta.
And so the attitude of a leader
Yaje nyatonko la daji ko
is determined by the attitude of the citizens.
wo iko tembenino nyadile wolem akbe mil marakan wol fana daji ko banyan.
And that is why
Wala ya tinna
I believe a French philosopher
lata ko français la londo ba dobije
had said
ko
that every people
momo
get the leader they deserve.
ika nyatonko la soto miyalan ko wala nyanta ke nyatonka ya.
And so really,
Ando wo kan tonya
I think the people,
njikita ko mol nying
as long as they show themselves
na tare lota ke fang itandi
to be deserving of respect,
ko mi tol nyanta kala molti nyanta ko horomo sotole
to be deserving of equal treatment,
du nyanta ke mobe mutam nyakilingo nyalema
to be deserving of treatment as human beings,
komi nyanta kam be muta komi be mu hadama din kilingolti yembe
that
muta
would go a long way
wo be kala feneta be tala ka fay mi
in the entrenchment of the never again.
ka bula ko kono mi yan ko wo sando nyenti ka fo mi ata kala koten.
So on those, on that note, with those few remarks,
Say wo kan anin nañu kuma kan sutu mi nga foten
I want to say thank you
mbafla la baraka
for the opportunity
ale wato min dina
of coming here
pour ngana jang
and helping the Commission
de marque commissionola
understand the context
pour ka lonke ko la be
and the background
anun ko min be ke kanu
to what was happening in this country
min be ke kanu nyim banko
in
Gambia
the
banko ka
justice
o
and judiciary sector
kata fanna la mi alon ko tilingo ni bundala anin kitindiro bundala
in the past 2 decades.
ni sanji mo ko mala
And I hope that will help us
dun jigeta ko be mako lale
build a bit better system,
tamandir bulo lande mi alon ko be kala tamandir kendolti
both for ourselves
mi alon ko pruntol fon
and posterity.
ani sama mol mi alon ko lebina tariko.
Thank you, Chairman.
Chairman baraka.
Mr. Chair, before the witness goes, I would like to have his statement, his written statement admitted as an exhibit.
What's the number?
I'll give you the number
Later on.
the next hearing. Yes, thank you.
Fine. Thank you very much, my counsel. Thank you again very much, Mr. Marena, for your testimony.
Baraka baka Mr. Council, baraka baka Mr. Marena ila kuma council.
But also a special thanks to you for the contributions that you and your team made in establishing this commission.
Kontondiro fole kontondir kendo mi alan ko ite ni la doku nyol ale wole ka kaje ko nying commissioner nying prior law.
Through this establishment, you rendered a splendid service to the Gambian people.
Ya jere kabri nying commissioner be law la ye doku kende bala ka Gambia dingole pour nying commissioner law.
Without the commission, we would not have known what witnesses have testified to in this commission.
Komi natara nu nying commissioner man law denun ta lonna nun sedol be kuma kangol mem fola nying commissioner.
Well, we thank you also for the very wise concluding remarks that you made.
Be fana jayla be tentula be jayla ila kuma kan labangol mi yow min di.
As well as launching this first part of the hearings on the judiciary.
Do fana kan yen kanko nga diamo min dati katana kiti bunda nin tilingo fana la teng.
Again, thank you very much indeed for your testimony. We will conclude our proceedings here and then resume Monday morning, 10 o'clock sharp. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.